started. Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Sure. Hanson?
Here.
Terry?
Here.
Carr?
Here.
Cruz? Frost?
Here.
Guerra?
Here.
Harris?
Here.
Kennedy? Lee?
Here.
Natoli? Peters? Cerna? Gaylord?
Here.
And Daniels.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum.
We have a quorum.
Commissioner Guerra, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
That too. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we'll move on to the Air Pollution Control Officer's report.
Can I read the statement before we begin?
Oh, yeah, go ahead and read the TV statement.
Okay. This meeting of the Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality Management District is cablecast live without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on Comcast, Consolidated Communications, and AT&T Uverse cable systems. This meeting is being closed captioned and will be webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. Today's meeting will be repeated on Sunday, March 25th, 2017 at 2 p.m. on Channel 14. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker form located on the table at the back of the chambers and give it to the clerk. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record. Also, at this time, please silence your cell phones until the conclusion of today's meeting.
Thank you for that. Larry?
Okay, thank you. First, I'll start off with federal issues related to district programs. I can't imagine anyone in this room that's unaware of what's happening at the federal government and the impacts that the president's budget could have and Congress's deliberations could have on the district and other agencies that do similar work to what we do. We're tracking that very carefully, and we have included prudent in our budget as we're looking forward, prudent estimates for how those might impact our budget. And the Budget and Finance Committee, Personnel Committee will see that today, and you will see that as we move forward to April and May, and you see the budgets. Of course, all the issues related to this have caused our cap-to-cap trip this year to be very important. It's sold out 2 months early, and we have a very robust team that's going to cap-to-cap. So I think I have in your packets this document. This is our cap-to-cap materials that you would see, and you have in those materials the list of the topics that we have: federal incentives, federal funding for grant programs, resiliency, biomass. These are issues that the air quality team will be leading in DC. We have a very strong team. I think we have at least 4 board members, Director Cruz, Guerra, Hanson, and Frost, I think, are all signed up for the air quality team. It could be others, and there's really good regional representation on this team too. So we're looking forward to 16 to 20 very interesting and informative meetings as we go back to DC. I will provide these in April. The full papers once they're approved by the Chamber of Commerce. But these are the topic areas that we'll be taking this year. The second is an update on a couple of meetings that we've had. We've had the Yosemite Leaders Conference and the New Partners for Smart Growth Conference, of which some of the board members have attended. And if anyone would like to make any comments related to that, I think those were very robust meetings, and there was a lot of interest, I think, from the board members I talked to there that in the topics at the conferences.
Yeah, if any attendees wanted to speak, go ahead.
I would like to. Thank you, Mr. Wrong mic. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank the Air District for being a consistent supporter of the Local Government Commission's Yosemite Conference, because I know the folks up here who attend, I was just talking to, we just all get a lot out of it. it's an opportunity to work with other local elected officials who are thinking about public health and air quality and so many other issues, and connect with solutions from other cities. I thought it was a great conference, and Larry, thank you for your consistent leadership within the LGC.
I would just echo Commissioner Hanson's comments. It was my first time attending. It was fantastic.
Done? Make a comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, Larry, I want to thank you also. This is my second time up to Yosemite for the LGC conference, and it was just loaded with great information for policymaking about so many different subjects. My particular interest this year was autonomous vehicles, but last year I took away a lot about housing. So a wide array of topics, great people, and couldn't ask for a better venue. So it's great to see you up there.
Thank you. Commissioner Lee?
There you go. Well, this is my first time at the conference. Some of the things that I think makes this conference exceptional is the fact that all the workshops were compacted in the morning and in the evening, which allows me to really enjoy the wonderful park. And not only that, but the materials that came out of it, I thought it was extremely helpful that it was put online, which allowed me to share with my council. So that was super helpful, and I think those are some of the aspects that make this conference exceptional, and I hope that component of it will continue. And for me, this is not the last time I'm attending. I'm planning on attending next year as well. So.
Well, I appreciate that, and I take those materials and deliver those to staff also, because those are very relevant to work we do in the district, and depending on which staff, I'll forward those presentations. And we sometimes have continuing discussions about topics because we find out things, emerging issues and such that we need to pass. I need to take back to the district too. So thank you all for attending. It's a very robust conference, and I'm very proud that our region was so well represented there.
Commissioner Guerra?
Next thing is
actually, Larry.
Yes.
No,
sorry.
I was just going to echo the same comments, and I think what made this conference different than many of the other conferences we participate in is the level of depth in the conversation. And many times when we, as policymakers, are invited to different conferences, it's barely scratching the surface. But from the points of economic models to future of autonomous vehicles and what those impacts are and how they relate to the diversity of cities, particularly our region that has both rural, urban, and suburban. I thought the conference, what sets it apart from any other conferences I think that we've gone to, and my hat's off to one of our board members of the Local Government Commission, Director Hanson, is that they do take the time to make that time valuable for all the participants by the level of depth in that.
Okay. Next item is on our Car Share Sacramento event announcement. We have a whole range of programs that are coming down the pike where our district has received funding from the Cap and Trade program, and this is one of those areas. It's putting electric vehicles, 8 electric vehicles at 4 low-income housing locations in Sacramento. This event will be May 5th at 11 a.m. It's at Alder Grove Apartments. And it'll be a ribbon cutting for the cars that are there. The funding, as I said, was provided by Cap and Trade. There will be in all 300 free car share memberships given to residents in these low-income communities. And what this will be is the cars will be housed and owned there by the staff at the facility, but they'll be available to people who are at the low-income housing for use. For trips and such as that. So it's a vehicle for people who don't have vehicles or don't have, say, their cars in the shop and they need to get to school or to the hospital. They would be able to sign up for those cars and such. Partners in this include Airbnb, City of Sacramento, Mutual Housing, SHRA, SMUD, Zipcar, Policy in Motion, and the Air District. And our staff is setting this up. Jamie says 2 minutes, right? for all this, for speeches, for all the people that come. But we want to be sure our elected officials, we'll also have some people from the legislature and from ARB there, because we want to demonstrate that cap and trade funding is actually showing up in communities and helping people like it's supposed to do.
Larry?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, do you mind if I?
Go ahead.
I just want to say thank you for that. That's in my district. I know Supervisor Cerna also has a dual role there. It's a supervisorial district, and it's really in the Cal-Enviro screen in the top 1% of disadvantaged parts of the state. So it's a great opportunity to invest into a community that needs opportunity. And thank you for helping put that together.
And Commissioner Carr?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Larry, could you repeat where those are going to be located?
This is in Alder Grove Apartments. Where are the others?
Lemon Hill, 6,000 Hill.
Lemon Hill,
Then Edgewater.
Edgewater, and then at the station, at the
Amtrak station.
at the Amtrak station. So that's the locations for the first 4. We very much hope we'll continue to get funding and be able to expand that program out to other locations.
Hope so.
Yeah. So the next is introduction of new employees. Sac State has done very well this time around. So first is Frank Wolf. Frank, wave. Frank was raised in Sacramento and went to Sac State. He has a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Studies. He previously worked for Michael L. Johnson, LLC in Davis. He spent 7 years as a sampling coordinator. He's been working here as air quality specialist in the program coordination division, helping to fill in after deployment of Ken Lashbrook. Ken is a CW 4 or 5 with the U.S. Army. He is a boat. He works with the LCU, the boats that go out in the ocean and deliver supplies, and he is one of the top non-commissioned or warrant officers in the nation in that program. He's worked at the district and been deployed to Iraq and all over the world over the years. So Frank is helping there, and potentially down the road there will be a position open. We think, and we'll see how Frank is able to stick around with us here. He's done really well working with PAM sampling the last 3 summers. We were happy with his work, and we were happy to be able to bring him on board in this capacity. He lives in Sacramento with his wife and two little girls, 1 and 3. Tom is here. Tom is a familiar face to the district staff because he's worked over at Yola Solano as the public information officer for the last 5 years. During that time, he's collaborated well with us in the Spare the Air program, and he's ran their voluntary fireplace program over at Yola Solano Air District. He spent 6 years working in communications with the California Public Utilities Commission, and he earned his degree in journalism from Sac State. He says here that he spends his time off stepping on logos, cleaning up Play-Doh, and altogether having a blast with his 2 daughters. So and we know Tom well, and we're very happy to have him here. He's a real pro, and we kept him in the region here, although we did steal him from Yola Solano Air District. But we picked a great guy. Good to have you here, Tom. I'm familiar with that with my grandkids. The last thing I wanted to mention here was Director Carr asked for a report on the race and gender of district staff. You have this in your folder. It breaks it out by, you see this by gender and also male and female, the breakdown amongst those 2. So it's just information for you. We select as the best candidate that comes through the door when we have advertisements, but we try very hard to diversify our applications so that we're reaching as many people as possible so we get the best candidate pool. So if any of you have thoughts or ideas as to how we might diversify that, we'll be happy to talk with you and let you know how we send out applicants, how we inform people when we have positions, and then we're always happy to diversify that if we can.
Mr. Chair, at the floor.
Commissioner
Yes,
Carr?
I'd be glad to meet with you, Larry. I see the African-American representation is underrepresented on the staff, and there are a number of ways that we can approach it, but mainly it's increased outreach. Historically black colleges are a good place to start, but I'll get with you because we still have that other issue to discuss.
Yes. Okay, we will schedule a meeting to talk about this. And that's everything I have.
Okay, I do have a question, but I'm Commissioner Frost?
Thank you. Larry, I was just curious, does this breakdown of ethnic representation, does it pretty much coincide with the district's demographics? In other words, do we know what the representation in the district is, as far as, what, do you understand what I'm saying?
I think that Director Carr has identified probably the biggest discrepancy here as far as the African American population in the district. We have had several retirements recently that's affected that, but that has been an issue that we have been thinking about for a while, and I'm really happy that we'll have the opportunity to talk about that, because that particular issue has been one issue that we have seen a trend over the last, say, 4 or 5 years, and we've had people retire and we have replaced people in the African American community. So I would say in the other areas we're not far off. Our district staff, I think last time we checked, speaks 15 different languages fluently. So we have a very diverse staff, I believe. But we think about that, but we try to hire the people that come in the door. That's how we do it. So
I'm always frustrated because it always shows the white population, but there are the Slavic and the Indian community, and there are different ethnicities that you don't really see the breakdown.
Yep.
How it really is.
and those are represented within that community.
And
also.
they may be underrepresented also.
Sure.
So,
But we'll continue, and any board members or directors who wish to have discussions about this, we're always interested in ideas for how we can diversify our applicants, pool whenever we send out job announcements.
Commissioner Lee?
I'd be interested in an additional breakdown of the service area for quality, so that certainly for me, I can compare to see where the discrepancies are. And correct me if I'm wrong, Director Frost, where you're going with that is a disaggregation of the categories that we see here. Certainly for the Asian Pacific Islander community, I think Asian is a very broad category. I would be interested in disaggregating that, breaking that down a little bit more, and seeing what the staff looks like in comparison to the community as a whole. So what would be helpful for me if you went a little bit further on those two issues? Thank you.
And
Commissioner go ahead.
We're trying to be thoughtful in the questions that we ask current employees. So we're working through, there's a certain amount of information we get on applications, and a certain amount of information we obviously know our employees. With 100 employees, we know our employees very well, but we don't want to intrude on employees either. So we're trying to balance appropriate thoughtfulness in the HR area with getting the information that the directors have asked. We've been interested in that, and anecdotally, we have known that particularly for the African American community that we are underrepresented in our staff, and have been thinking about that for the last several years, way before you mentioned that, Director Carr. But we will do our best to answer that question.
Commissioner Gaylor.
Yeah, just wanted to thank Director Carr for bringing this up, but I also wanted to see if there was a possibility of adding one more layer to it as far as age as well.
So, we'll see what we can do in that area too. I would say that we have been rapidly getting younger at the district because we've had retirements, and I'm going to be helping that along soon. So I think I skew that somewhat at the district, but we can certainly do that.
Just important to track. I think, so.
Understand.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Commissioner Daniels?
Just want to ask this question. Do we hire the best, most qualified person that we get amongst applicants?
Absolutely. And
you.
I think the key is having a diverse pool of people come in, and that's the best shot you can take. And we hire the best person of the applicants that are there.
Thank you. I had a separate question, and you and I had a discussion at the conference about the regional bike share program. And I wanted to see if you could give us a brief update as to where we are and what's happened in the last few weeks on that.
Gee. That's
as brief as possible while still making sure that, especially for the newer members that haven't been here for a couple years.
We have worked very hard for several years to bring bike share to Sacramento. Many of our board members have been to D.C. and seen Capital Bike Share. We ride on that. It works fantastically well in D.C. and Minneapolis and many places across the U.S. We've joined the National Bike Share, the American Bike Share Association, so we're well aware of where it's working and what does well in other cities. The district initiated a study to see whether it would work in Sacramento. This was a couple of years ago. The board approved that, and the study said yes, bike share would work very well here in Sacramento. And for a range of reasons, it would help our transit, it would help first and last mile, it would help tourists, it would also help minority communities and people who don't have cars if we had a robust system where they would be able to get bikes at a reasonable rate and get around town. We passed the responsibility for that. We applied for and got $3.8 million in CMAQ money allocated to buy the hardware for the system. But putting a system in is very hard. You have to have placements, you have to have MOUs, you have to have sponsorships. So we passed the responsibility to SACOG, and they've been working very hard. Last week they took the contract, finalized contract for SoBe bikes. I've been on, along with a number of other board members, have been on the committee that has been reviewing this over the last year and a half. And SoBe bikes won the contract, very robust bikes that would be operated very well. I think I know that we have a very good sponsorship effort underway. So I think everything was coming into place. And there's been a new idea, a new kind of bike that was brought forth at the meeting where they were going to vote on the contract. And I think the SACOG board decided to delay a month while they evaluated that. And at the next SACOG board meeting, they will be bringing back information. And I was personally disappointed that it wasn't signed and moved forward, because I think the contract that's in place is solid. It's a proven quantity. I think our board members who have been there have ridden the bikes. We know that it's going to work, and we'll see what SACOG board decides. I hope that they go with current system, sign the contract, and that the issues related to this new emerging technology can be resolved satisfactorily between Sacramento, City of Sacramento, and West Sacramento.
Okay.
Is that a fair comment?
Well, and that's what I was going to ask. If there's any members of the SACOG board that want to weigh in on this, please hit your speaker button. Commissioner Hanson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I serve on the Bike Share PSC. I think in my capacity as a city council member, because we're one of the 3 jurisdictions that are working with SACOG in the Air District. But I was very surprised, to say the least, at the decision last week at SACOG. I think it was probably not reflective of the 2 years of work we did related to procuring a regional bike share system and the countless hours of work that our city staff, our district staff, and SACOG staff have done. So it was a shock, to say the least. The effort to sort of look at a new provider outside of the government contracting rules, I think, is really suspect in my mind. And from what I've learned just in a short period of time, these systems in other cities have been very much a mess. And so I've asked our city staff to begin working on an ordinance that would prohibit any unlicensed or unpermitted bike share system from operating. Because what would happen is largely, say 1,000 bikes get dumped in one city that opts in, well, they end up all over the region. And then they're not permitted, nobody's responsible for them, and they can be left anywhere. There's no staff on the ground, as I understand, in this model to collect, rebalance, be responsible for the system. And so I have some very serious concerns. And I think Larry, on behalf of the district, I know we can't take an action because it's not agendized, but I think prior board action has warranted a letter of concern from the district to SACOG and to the SACOG board about the action last week and encouraging them to put the contract back on track, consistent with the work of the committee and consistent with government contracting procedures.
Thank you. Commissioner Gaylord.
Just had a quick question. What's the, and you probably already went over all this, but what's the footprint of that bike share program as far as regionally where it'll be?
The footprint is essentially in the core of Sacramento City, with some extensions out into environmental justice areas to Sac State, and recognizing the transit lines we have here, and in West Sacramento and in Davis. It is a regional system, but a starter system. And if you see the DC system, you know it started in downtown Washington, DC, but it's across the entire region. They got a system started, working, funded, in place, and then it's easily expandable after that. I think that Rancho Cordova and some of the other areas, potentially Citrus Heights, it would be very easy to expand the system. So you would have, and it would be around transit nodes. For example, Roseville would be a good location. And Amtrak has been very interested in this, but also RT, because it provides a really nice first and last mile, or actually first and last 5 miles in some cases for some of their stops. So it would be, and Folsom, of course, would be a location that might work fine, but having a system in downtown. What this means is, though, that residents in Rancho and Folsom, Citrus Heights, when they come downtown, would have access to that. And if, in fact, we expand it to other areas, they would have access in both areas with the same card, and in Davis. And we had also hoped that we could link it into the system in San Francisco so that you would have access both in Sacramento and if you went down Capitol Card there. So it's a lot of options. It will work with a Connect card.
The only thing I would add is that it's really the 3 cities, West Sacramento, Davis, Sacramento, but the universities, UC Davis, Sac State, Los Rios, I think is engaged as well. And then the transit providers, so YOLO Bus, RT, Capitol Corridor are the 3 biggest ones. And to have it integrate across the region and to the Bay Area's bike share. So it's meant to be a starter system, but it's also meant to be integrated into other transit modes.
Well, with Folsom, I had many conversations with constituents that this would be amazing for the community, and I'm surprised with so many proof of concepts, like you mentioned DC, but also you look at like Europe abroad. I mean, this thing works flawlessly, so it's odd. Yeah,
I think the challenge has been we've spent so much time on the CEQA planning effort. Now it's time to do something, and so delay is denial, essentially. Until we launch a starter system, we can't expand, and so that's the thing, is getting the starter system on the ground would give us the chance to go to Folsom, Rancho Cordova, Elk Grove, other cities in the region, and have it integrate then with transit and other institutions.
Very nice. Thank you.
Commissioner Harris.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to also say that I agree with Director Hansen and our APCO. We spend a lot of time, I'm on the PSC as well, and we spend a lot of time working on this contract, a couple of years, very far down the road. So I agree, I was somewhat disappointed with the way the SACOG meeting went. We selected Social Bicycles because they proved to us that they have a good product and they have a good working model. I agree with Director Hansen that it's really time to pull the trigger. We've been working on this a long time. I think the region is ready for bike share. We need to get this proof of concept out and show that it works in this market. So I would also express to you, Larry, that I think a letter of concern would be warranted, when appropriate time comes.
Okay. We will get right to work on that.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry to bring on another subject, but I know it's been pressing in a lot of our communities in the interest of
very
what happened in that
timely
meeting.
subject.
Okay, so moving on, next on our agenda is closed session. I'd like to move that to the end of the meeting and take up the rest of our items, and then we can recess into closed session. So we have our consent calendar next. Is there anything that anybody would like to pull or ask questions about on the consent calendar?
Move approval.
I have a motion and a second. All those, we don't need a roll call, right?
No.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, public hearing, reasonably available control technology demonstration for the 2008 ozone
I think Kevin Williams is going to
AQSs.
is going to do this
Try
presentation.
to come up with an acronym for that.
Well, good morning. My name is Kevin Williams. And
Hang
my
on,
mic
hang
isn't on, is it?
Yeah, it is
Now.
It is now.
Okay. I lead the rulemaking group at the district. The proposal I'm presenting today is to adopt a plan that demonstrates that the district meets the reasonably available control technology requirements. This plan is also known as the RAC-SIP. RACT is required by the Clean Air Act for all non-attainment areas, for all sources that are covered by a CTG, and for all major sources of VOC or NOx. And a CTG is a document published by EPA. It's known as a Control Techniques Guideline document, and it applies to particular source types. The district is designated as a severe non-attainment area, and that's for the 2008 ozone standard. And the EPA rules to implement that standard require that the district submit a revision to the SIP that demonstrates that the district does meet RACT. EPA's definition of RACT is based on controls that are reasonably available, and it considers both technological and cost factors in that. It's a baseline level of control that existing sources are expected to be able to meet. It's considered to be less stringent than best available control technology, which is what we apply to new sources. We went through each of the district rules to determine whether or not they meet RACT. First, for the CTG categories, we took a look at those CTGs, and we looked through the district sources to determine whether we had sources of that type. If we did, we looked at the district rules that apply, compared those to the CTG and other RACT guidance documents. And if there were no sources of that type, we prepared a negative declaration stating that a RACT rule is not required. We also looked at the major sources in the district to look at the kinds of equipment that are located at those sources. And we took the rules that apply to those types of equipment and compared those rules to RACT guidance also. We've concluded that the district meets RACT for all the CTG and major sources, with two exceptions. First, there is a CTG for plastic parts coating operations, and we don't have a rule that covers that particular source type. And also, we have a major source of NOx in the district that uses natural gas-fired ovens that emit NOx, and we don't have a rule that covers that equipment either. Consequently, to fix the deficiencies, the RAC-SIP includes commitments to adopt 2 new rules. So there would be two sources that would become subject to new rules. Both of these sources right now in their permits already meet RAC standards, and so there would be no impact on the businesses. There'd be no impact on emissions, and then there'd also be no impact on district sources for these district resources for these currently permitted sources. We used our regular procedures to notify the public and also the agencies about today's proposal. We didn't get any comments from the public on the proposal. We did receive one comment letter from EPA Region 9, and that letter pointed out 3 potential areas of concern. We went through each of those comments and considered their ramifications. We've concluded that the district's plan does meet RACT, except for the 2 deficiencies we've already identified. What we're recommending today is that the board determine that the adoption of the RAC-SIP is exempt from CEQA, approve the resolution adopting the RAC-SIP, and then direct staff to forward the RAC-SIP to ARB for submittal to the EPA.
Thank you. Commissioner Natoli, there.
Yes. Kevin, thanks. Just a question, and I guess I kind of know the answer, but it occurs to me that if you've done the analysis and the 2 businesses that are affected or would be affected by a new rural development are already meeting the standards, so what's the problem? It's kind of like somebody back in Washington or somebody in Region 9, they're looking at all the stuff's in the plan. We have to submit a plan, but we're not out of compliance. Our businesses are using the control technologies and the processes, I guess, that are the ones that are the standards that would be in the rule anyway. And it's kind of like it's where we've gotten as far as I believe. Always got to have a rule for everything, and understanding that most people will use good common sense and will follow standards. I mean, if obviously it makes good business sense, and if it makes good environmental sense, and I think people have a conscience, and I guess it just occurs to me that we're driven to have to legislate and to put rules in place when in fact rules are oftentimes there for the 2 to 3% of folks who might not want to play by them to begin with, and will do their best to get around or maybe reluctantly come into compliance. And I guess I find it a little odd. And again, this is all fine and it's what we're being required to do, but it seems a little bit, I think kind of contrary to thinking that if people are doing the right thing, not that people will always do the right thing, maybe you'd have a business come in, but we're basically going to develop a rule to satisfy somebody's, a requirement, wherever it is, that we have to have rules in place, even though people are playing by the rules and we're in compliance.
Yeah, I certainly understand your comment, and the reason the sources meet those standards right now is that we have a very proactive program that implements best available control technology when new sources come in. We incorporate those limits into the permits, and those standards are at least equivalent to RACT controls.
And that's not good. And that's not good enough. I mean,
unfortunately, it's not.
I guess my comment would be this: that we're in California and we do a good job and we have a good staff, and see the amount of work it took to put this.
I know
this.
that.
A lot of work from staff.
Yeah.
If we were in other parts of the U.S., it might not be the case, and those standards that EPA puts out are there to protect the public from toxics and other issues that would happen. But we do have to check this box because it's a federal requirement, and if we don't do this, we could be sued. And there are agencies or organizations out there that will sue you over technicalities and collect the money, because obviously it's a federal requirement, you haven't met it, so if you get sued, so even though we are doing a great job, we still have to show it in the official manner, which is what we're doing here. We're officially doing the work. We're going to check the box. It's not going to impact any of our businesses. But what this effort does is it protects the district from any legal action, saying that we haven't done this last piece. And it's unfortunate that we have to do this. We're one of the people that's doing a great job. Yeah. But it is a necessary step in the process for us to do that.
Okay, thanks.
And maybe just one small thing real quickly. Mark Lautzenheiser, the division manager for program coordination, which includes the rules section. Along the exact lines of which you are mentioning, though, Director Natoli, is the element that we received some EPA additional comments where they had actually identified 4 more rules that are already in place, where they said they thought maybe they could go further. But our analysis and our response, though, indicated that we have checked those boxes. We believe we have the documentation to protect both the district and the businesses. We actually provide protection to both by going through this process. And so we certainly agree that where possible, as in the case of the more recent comments, we felt very comfortable in terms of stating, Kevin and his staff did a great job outlining about a 2-page response on how we met all those requirements for the 4 other rules that they'd added.
I'm
some
glad you're
additional
pushing
comments
back
on.
a little bit and making that statement. I think that's important, so thanks. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. Any other questions? This is an action item.
So this is a item that requires a public hearing.
So you have to
I'm sorry.
open a public hearing and close one.
So open the public hearing. Do we have any public comment for this?
No, we do not.
Okay. And again, any other questions from the commission? Let me go ahead and close the public hearing.
Second.
And I think I heard a motion from Natoli and a second from Hanson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Item 5 is for our discussion calendar, update of land use and transportation project review principles.
Real fast before you move on. Before we begin with item 5, I'd like to advise the board that there was an administrative error with the 2017 proposed project review principles attachment. The attachment did not include the full introductory text. The document before you is the complete and correct version of the proposed project review principles.
The one that looks like this.
Yes.
And Paul Philly will present this.
Chair Terry, members of the board, I'm Paul Philly. I'm the program coordinator for the CEQA land use section. A large part of our work is to work with your planning and environmental staffs in reviewing development projects and CEQA documents in your jurisdictions. And we provide that technical assistance to help your staff create legally defensible CEQA documents. And the way that what guides us in our work is the project review principles, which this board adopted back in 2005. And in the intervening 12 years, a few things have changed. We now have greenhouse gas requirements. We have new significance thresholds. CAPCOA a lot of, I have a smartphone now. And in the future we'll have autonomous cars. It's just a lot of changes happening. And so the section thought that it would be a good idea to come back to the board with an update so that we could have the best guidance, the most recent documents, and we wanted to make sure that the board is on board with the changes that we're making. And so to make sure that because again, the purpose of this document is to assist your staffs at your local jurisdictions. We sent a copy of this to the planning and environmental staffs at all your jurisdictions. We generally heard back positive to neutral comments. The city of Sacramento had 3 specific comments, and those were incorporated into the final project before you. And so what we're here today is, this is informational only. We just want to get feedback from the board about the project and the guidance documents, and we hope that we can bring it back for action next month. This concludes my presentation, and I'm open for questions and comments.
A question from Commissioner Hanson.
Thank you, Paul. One of the issues that's sort of been constantly confounding here, and I think it would be appropriate to eventually address through this, is an issue that I'm not terribly excited about, but I think the Air District needs a consistent policy around, and that's the particular challenge of leaf blowers. I know that our staff have struggled behind the scenes. We've never adopted a policy at the board related to the particulate pollution or some of the other localized things that may be raised by the aggressive blowing of dirt, particularly during non-attainment times. So what I'd like to ask is, as we move forward, not necessarily in adopting this policy today, but that we find a way to look at science and see what the scientific impact of particularly 2-stroke engines related to lawn equipment is for particulate. And we read things like, there's just a New York Times article I gave Director Harris about the impact of 1 hour of a 2-stroke versus, a clean not a clean, but a modern vehicle's mileage. Something like 2,000 miles of Ford F-150 is equivalent to 1 hour of a two-stroke engine's pollution. If that's true, and we have science to say that, I think we should probably find a way to begin to incentivize, just like we have with mobile and stationary sources, the upgrade of equipment in our region, so that during times of non-attainment, we can begin to pull some of that pollution out of the air through incentive programs and otherwise. But I think the science is mostly anecdotal from what I understand at this point, so it would be great to drill into that, because I'm constantly getting harassed by constituents who hate them, but also by the people who love them, and I don't have a fact and reason-based policy to guide decision making. So I think the Air District could lead on that.
Thank you for that question, and we will look into that. I truly mean that, because I think there are some new things that's happened. I think South Coast now has a incentive program. They've been pushing for this too, and it's a difficult area for air districts, but we will relook where we are and come back to the board with some recommendations.
And thank you. I just would finish by saying I don't think we should do anything more than give guidance to jurisdictions. I know that occasionally jurisdictions have asked the Air Board to weigh in officially for or against. I don't know that that's because of the particular prerogatives of the jurisdictions that's appropriate, but if we do find that they're a contributor and we can create some guidelines that would be recommended, or find an incentive program solution, that would be a way for us to provide leadership, but also guidance to our jurisdictions while they do what they choose to do.
Okay.
Director Harris?
Thank you, Chair. It looks like Director Hansen and I are in sync today. We've talked about this, Larry, you and I, in the past, and I agree. I think for the Air Quality Control District to make recommendations to review all available science regarding this would help local jurisdictions in creating ordinance. And it's very hard to do it without the backup, and certainly AQMD would be the place to look to for the data regarding the situation. I've been contemplating a partial ban on two-stroke leaf blowers in the city of Sacramento, but to bring that across the finish line, I need a lot of substantial data, and so I'll look to you for that to move forward. Thanks very much.
Director Frost?
Larry, I wanted to this is the one. I wanted to ask you, I was inspired by this report, but when I got to support transportation demand management, it reminded me of some issues that are going on in my district. I know we're doing that, the electric bus beta test opportunity for some of the schools, but in some of the areas, there are schools that are actually geographically located close together, and when the school districts stopped busing the children, it created a real problem. And while I was on a ride-along with our CHP in Orangevale the other day, they were talking about that is one of the major problems, and it seems like it's an air quality problem too. They actually brought it up. That, is there a way to support the school, or to connect with, for all of us to work with the school district to identify some opportunities that might relieve the congestion in some of these areas? I'm specifically zeroed in on Orangevale, but I have a feeling it might be happening somewhere else where they could maybe have 1 or 2 buses that just bus the children to a nearby church, so parents can pick up at a different location, and it can reduce the congestion and the just idle cars in one place in a neighborhood. And also we might be able to bring up you might be able to think of other things, like if they adjust the times that they have children released from school, and that other ways to help them rethink the way that's happening. It's a kind of extending beyond just air quality. It's calling out our CHP resources and parents' time away from work or whatever. So I just wanted to bring it up to see if there was something we could do to maybe contribute to some solutions there.
Again, thank you for your interest. We will certainly look into that. It's been an issue that's been on our maybe our back burner and front burner occasionally as we've worked over the years, but we will look into that and come back with some recommendations and thoughts to the board.
Thank you, Larry.
Appreciate the question. And
no, this is an information item only, right?
Yes, as Paul said, we will bring this back for action next month, but we felt like it's always better to bring issues like this to the board prior to bringing it as an action item and give you an opportunity. If a board member has an issue on a particular topic area there, then we can work on that between meetings.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment?
No, we do not.
Okay. Any board ideas or comments before we adjourn? Commissioner Daniels?
It's a crazy time in state government. It's a crazy time in federal government. The state is looking like it wants to move forward with the very irresponsible act of classifying us as a sanctuary state. The federal government has basically said they could cut off funding for cities, and then I would think even states. The EPA is going to change. The EPA money is going to change. The federal money is going to change. So these are things in my mind that look like they could impact this district tremendously in some ways. Is there an effort or any work being done on what if? What if this happens? What if this happens? And what if this happens? And what it means to the district if those kind of things do happen?
Absolutely, and I'm in contact with both CAPCOA, our California Air Pollution Control Officers, and our National Association in trying to keep track of this. Frankly, at the national level, there hasn't been a lot of leadership put in place to really tell us what might happen. The only thing we have as guidance is the president's budget. It talked about 30% cuts in some programs at the district. The budget documents that the board will see later, the committee and then the board in April and May will be conservative and will include those projected cuts. I feel personally that there will be less because I think just like our cap-to-cap team is going to go back and say, these are really important local programs. They provide benefits to right in our communities. They're very necessary. So we will, I think, have lesser cuts. And if they don't pass a budget, there'll be a continuing resolution that will keep things where they are today. But we feel like it's prudent for us to plan for that. And the budget that you will see will have that included in that. And as the conditions evolve over the next year, 2 years, we will, of course, react to those. And I will tell the Budget Committee that, and we will give the Budget Committee and the board a projection looking out over 5 years. We started that quite a number of years ago, looking out 5 years. And 5 years is a time frame that gives us a lot of flexibility for making adjustments in programs that don't impact our staff. We have been very committed over the years to keeping our staff in place, but we'll keep jobs unfilled. We will adjust programs. There's things that we can do, and we've thought about those, and we have those in our back pockets. So very thoughtful. We want to be in a position to where something happens, we can react, and we don't impact staff and core programs at the district. That's always been our goal, and we've been successful with that.
Thank you. Director Gare.
Larry, I just want to say thank you for being proactive, at least thinking about what the concerns are from what I would call a draconian federal budget when it comes to air quality. But what I would ask also is to have council consider or look at the need to join an amicus brief with even some of our majority conservative controlled cities like San Diego, who are objecting to the local commandeering of resources or restricting local agencies from applying for federal governments because of that. And it just goes to the fundamental local versus federal control. And if the Air District becomes in a position where it is ineligible to apply for resources because of an overall state policy, I think we should take an action to join those legal briefs, much like I think a number of other jurisdictions have done that as well.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other announcements to be made? With that, we will adjourn into closed session.
Good morning, Jamil Moons, Division Manager of Administrative Services. I'm reporting out from closed session. The board directed the negotiating team to proceed as discussed in closed session. Thank you.